under the Committee on Finance of the Senate, and would like to welcome to the Senate the DND family with all the attached agencies. Good morning, sirs. So, sige, sabi nga lang, without much ado, let's start with your presentation first.
Yes, sir.
I would like to acknowledge muna the presence of my colleague, Senator Francis Tolentino, the Vice Chair of the Committee on Finance of the Senate. Sige, please proceed, Ed.
Yes, sir. To the chairperson of the Committee on Finance, other members of the Senate, and invited guests of the Senate present today, I am honored to present the budget proposal of the Department of National Defense for fiscal year 2020. The scope of my presentation shall be as follows. As shown, mandate, trusts, in the program expenditure classification, proxy performance indicators and targets, fiscal year 2020 budget proposal, and significant features of the budget proposal. The mandate, pursuant to Executive Order number 292 as amended by Executive Order number 112, Series 1999, the DND is mandated to maximize its effectiveness for guarding against external and internal threats to national peace and security, promote the welfare of soldiers and veterans, and provide support for social and economic development. In line with the mandate, the mission of the DND is to guard against external and internal threats to national peace and security, promote the welfare of soldiers, veterans, and their dependents in order to attain national security, uphold sovereignty and territorial integrity, and support socio-economic development and political stability. The DND Trust for fiscal year 2020. To pursue our mandate and mission, we have set 5 program thrusts for fiscal year 2020 as follows. Sovereignty and territorial integrity of the state is secured, internal stability promoted and sustained, highest standard of capability and preparedness of disasters attained, operations in support of global peace and security improved and sustained, and good governance. Allow me to present the organizational outcome and performance targets of DND attached agencies for fiscal year 2020 under the proxy structure. For 2020, to attain the desired level of support to force employers in the prescribed readiness condition, the Philippine Army targets to maintain 219 tactical battalions and 84 ready reserve battalions, with 81% and 65% operational readiness respectively. It also aims to achieve 90% effective strength of tactical battalions that can be mobilized within 1 hour as dictated by high headquarters. The Philippine Air Force, on the other hand, aims to provide 100% support of its Tactical Air Operations Group to the Unified Commands. To achieve this, the Air Force shall maintain 154 various types of aircraft in its inventory and respond to 90% of its flight-directed mission within 1 hour and achieve 100% of its target flying hours. Similarly, for the Philippine Navy, it aims to provide all of its naval units to the Unified Commands. To attain this, it shall deploy and sustain 134 of its units for utilization, prepare 51 units for deployment, and sustain 137 force level support service units. The General Headquarters shall deliver its organizational outcome of protecting the sovereignty of the state and the Filipino people through its 3 programs, namely Joint Force Planning, Joint Force Operations, and Joint Force Capability. For the Joint Force Planning subprogram, for the Joint Force Planning subprogram, GHQ commits to formulate, adopt, and issue 138 military plans and policies. Under the Joint Force Operations subprogram, it shall conduct 140 bilateral and multilateral engagements, 193,226 joint operations, and 5,944 security operations for the President, the First Family, visiting heads of state, and other distinguished personalities. For the Joint Force Capability Sub-Program, the JHQ likewise commits to provide quality healthcare treatment and services to 10,852 military personnel and dependents, treat 90% of patients within the accepted length of stay per case, and provide training for 1,300 PMA cadets and 146 military students of the Command and General Staff College. Lastly, for the AAP Modernization Sub-Program, the JHQ aims to have 10 procurement contracts signed within the year. May I now present the performance targets of the DND civilian bureaus for 2020. The DND proper, or the Office of the Secretary, commits to accomplish 100% of its targets based on DND proper policies and 80% of its policies and strategies accepted by the President and the Cabinet. To attain this, DND proper shall develop 131 key documents products in accordance with the implementation of the Defense System of Management, or DSOM, 13 KDPs for our international defense and security engagements, and 1 DND-wide program performance and budget execution review, or PPBER report. Meanwhile, in order to achieve 116.25% supportability of AFP small arms ammunition requirements for 2 basic loads, the government arsenal shall continue to manufacture 40 million rounds of small arms ammunition with a 98% acceptance rate of each manufactured output based on standards. For the Office of Civil Defense, it aims to improve the resilience of communities to disasters through its 3 sub-programs, namely Civil Defense Enhancement, number 2, Disaster Risk Reduction and Management, and number 3, Disaster Management Operations. OCD's Civil Defense Enhancement Sub-Program shall capacitate 1,663 volunteers and local DRRM officers and maintain 18 operation centers. On the other hand, through its Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Sub-Program, OCD aims that 70% of the participants rate the trainings as at least satisfactory and targets to assess 100% of Gawad Kalasag entries submitted by different agencies and sectors, and review and evaluate all 1,715 local DRRM plans of provinces, cities, and municipalities nationwide. Lastly, for the Disaster Management Operations Sub-Program, OCD aims to ensure that 100% of requests for non-food items of disaster-stricken LGUs are acted upon, as well as the conduct and support of slow onset and sudden onset hazards. In addition, OCD endeavors to ensure 100% accomplishment on operations conducted and or supported in response to planned events. The National Defense College of the Philippines is responsible for the capacity improvement of defense and security leaders. For 2020, it commits to produce 22 research papers and 11 publications on defense and security policy studies. It shall likewise continue to conduct the Master in National Security Administration, or MNSA, course with 65 enrollees and graduates. For the Philippine Veterans Affairs Office, its goals are to empower Filipino veterans and to demonstrate to the Filipino people's appreciation and gratitude to the veterans through its 3 programs. Under the Veterans Welfare and Benefits Administration Program, PVAO shall process 92% of benefit claims with 10 working days upon receipt of complete documents and provide non-pension benefits to 9,998 recipients. Through its Veterans Affairs Management Program, PVAO aims to conduct 42 veteran-related engagement and assist 42 veterans organizations. Under its Veterans Memorial and Historical Preservation Program, PVAO shall also maintain 8 existing shrines, conduct 13 veteran celebratory events, and produce 4 publications. For the Veterans Memorial Medical Center, its primary responsibility is to deliver quality healthcare services to veterans and their dependents. To To support this in 2020, BMMC shall provide healthcare services to veterans and their dependents categorized by ensuring the proper treatment of 10,000 inpatients and 90,000 outpatients. BMMC shall likewise provide the needed attention and treatment to patients in emergency ward. Budget proposal for fiscal year 2020. To provide the resources to accomplish the goals of the department as earlier discussed, allow me to present the DND's budget proposal for fiscal year 2020. Based on the National Expenditure Program, NAP, the Defense Department is allocated a total budget of 258.35 billion pesos, of which 188.65 billion is for the regular fund. The regular fund is distributed as follows: 119.2 billion or 46% for personnel services, 40.7 billion or 16% for maintenance and other operating expenses MOOE, and 28.83 billion or 11% for capital outlay. The allocation for veterans and AFP pensioners, which is under the Pension and Gratuity Fund, is 69.7 billion pesos or 27% of the total budget proposal. Compared to the DND budget for this year, our fiscal year 2020 budget proposal is higher by 1.3% or 2.43 billion pesos. The variances for each expense class is as shown: personal services with additional 3.24 billion pesos, MOOE with an increase of 1.45 billion, and capital outlay with a decrease of 2.26 billion. Distribution by budget structure. The distribution of the regular allocation based on the prescribed budget structure and how it compares to the fiscal year 2019 budget is as shown as follows. Operations increased by 0.93%, while general administration and support by 5.12%. For pensions, which is included under the Pension Gratuity Fund of the Expenditure Program, the total requirement for AFP retirees increased by 29%, equivalent to 11.93 billion pesos, to cover the implementation of Joint Resolution Number 1, or the increase in pension of AFP retirees. On the other hand, the allocation for veterans increased by 6% or 740 million pesos due to the implementation of RA 11164, or the increase in old age pension of World War II veterans, World War II, Korean, and Vietnam veterans, pensioners from 5,000 to 20,000 per month. Distribution by program. This slide shows how the DND budget proposal is distributed to DND line agencies under the regular fund. The share of the Armed Forces of the Philippines is 183.31 billion pesos, posting a 1.6% increase from the current year's budget. Meanwhile, the allocation for civilian agencies totals 5.34 billion pesos, which is 11.3% lower than the 2019 appropriations. Significant features. I shall now present the significant features of our budget proposal for 2020. The personal services allocation shall support a staffing summary of our line agencies composed of 148,668 uniformed military personnel, 12,400 civilian employees, and 69,938 CAFGO elements. The significant increase in personal services of 3.2 billion pesos can be attributed to the following: adjustment in pay and allowances of military personnel, increase in number of civilian personnel based on Government Manpower Information System or GMIS, terminal leave and retirement gratuity benefits, and other PS adjustments. On the other hand, The increase in maintenance and other operating expenses, MOOE, is 1.45 billion pesos. The next slide shows a summary of increases under MOOE net of non-recurring programs. 824.38 million due to inflationary effects on inflation-indexed items. 1.323 billion for sustainment of units. 746.2 million pesos for the MOOE requirements of equipment acquired as part of the capability upgrade program and capital outlay funds projects. 558.04 million for additional fund for ammunitions. 500.52 million for the expansion of existing programs, activities, and projects. 386.7 million for quick response fund for the OCD. 49.9 million for requirements for additional troops, and 33.22 million for ICT MOE requirement of METI. On capital outlay, there is an overall decrease of 2.26 billion pesos after non-recurring projects were factored out. The new or expanded projects of the department are due to the following: 974.44 million for the mobility requirements, 786.99 million to support the construction and enhancement of base and base support facilities, 578.76 million for the expansion of existing programs, activities, and projects, 234.17 million for the sustainment of units, 96.9 million for the hardware requirements for METI projects, 113.3 million for the quick response fund, 70.23 million for the requirements of additional troops, and 74 million for the procurement of equipment for production, quality assurance, and fabrication of the government arsenal. I have just presented the 258.35 billion budget proposal of the Defense Department for fiscal year 2020 and its significant features. Rest assured that all of us in the department shall continue to pursue our mandate and achieve our goals with more vigor to ensure a stable national security environment conducive for economic growth and development. Notwithstanding the inclusion of priority programs, activities, and projects in the fiscal year 2020 National Expenditure Program, may I respectfully request favorable consideration of the following priority projects, activities of the department as congressional initiative from among those which are not considered in the NAB. It's flashed in the screen, the additional priority projects of DND for 2020. This ends my presentation, Mr. Chairman. Thank you and good day.
Is there a next presenter? GHQ or yan na yan?
Ito, sir.
Ito na, okay.
The only one, sir.
Okay, before I recognize and yield the floor to Senator Drilon, I very quickly, I would just like to find out and inquire on the status of the activation of the Basulta Infantry Division. Kasi last year, pursuant to the instruction of the President, di ba, you asked me, because the NEP was submitted before the President gave that instruction to immediately activate one infantry division. And you requested me to augment your budget for the purpose in the amount of 4,782 million pesos, which I proposed, and the same was adopted in the Senate version. However, during the bicameral conference, approved was only 1.391 billion. So, kindly update us on the utilization of the augmentation of 1.391 billion pesos and the status of the activation of that's the 11th Infantry Division. Okay.
May I ask the CGPA to update the Senate?
Morning, sir. The 1.391 billion budget provided in fiscal year 2019 will support the 1,018 personnel, composed of 100 officers, 900 enlisted personnel, and 18 civilian employees, to include the operationalization of the division headquarters, and it will support 3 infantry battalions, sir. Sir, it is already...
Has it been fully utilized, the 1.391 billion?
Sir, it's still not yet fully utilized, sir. It is ongoing. The recruitment,
How
sir,
much
is
has been
ongoing.
utilized? Of the 1.391 billion, how much has been utilized for the activation? And what is the status of the activation?
Sir,
Recruitment,
we have
enlistment,
already activated it, sir. We have already utilized the 1 billion pesos, sir, for the establishment of the division.
Ano yung personnel fill-up as of now? Sige.
Yeah. Sir, yun na yun, sir, yung 1,018 personnel.
So, fully,
Yes, sir. Yun na yun, sir.
so ang fill-up nyo 100%
Yung,
already?
hindi, sir, kulang pa yun, sir, kasi by
Kaya
next
nga,
year,
how many have been enlisted or recruited and enlisted to fill up the required number of personnel of the 11th Infantry Division? I'm asking this because you're again asking for not 4.7 as you presented. Sa presentation nyo, 4.782 billion yung hiningi. Actually, you're requesting for a funding of to catch up, ano?
Yes,
6.358 billion pesos. Ang tanong, kung hindi nyo pa fully utilized yung 1.391 billion and you'll be asking for another 6.358 billion, can you obligate or can you fulfill the utilization of the additional funding
yes, sir.
of another 6.38?
Yes, sir.
So out of the
Yung sa
1.391,
personnel, sir, na naka-recruit na tayo, sir,
Okay.
Ang susunod doon, sir, is yung
training.
training, capital outlay, sir, construction of additional building,
Yeah.
and yung equipment, sir. So, yun yung...
So you're confident if you're given the additional 6.358 billion or the 4.782 billion for 2020, you're confident na, kasi 4-year program ito eh.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And how much does it take to activate one infantry division? Di ba? Nasa mga 14 billion.
14.555.
So 4-year program ito,
Yes, sir.
itong activation.
Yes, sir.
So, kaya nga kailangan mag-catch up kayo by asking 6.358 billion.
Yes,
So
sir.
are you confident that you can fulfill the requirements
Yes, sir.
na corresponding to the additional funding that you're requesting?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We can, sir.
Sige. Apram. The chair now recognizes Senator Drilon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and let me personally welcome the DND staff. Just for the record, let me also acknowledge the stand taken by Secretary Lorenzana on various public issues, which clearly asserts the independence of the DND insofar as, or not independence, but the, not independence, but the firm belief and principles of the DND insofar as national security is concerned, with the national interest always a principal consideration. Thank you very much, Mr. Lorenzana, for allowing citizens like me to have confidence in the DND. Let me now raise a very worrisome issue, which I'm sure you're aware of. And this is the matter of the budgetary requirements for our pensions. My analysis, Mr. Chairman, firstly, the first question is, you presented here that the allocation for veterans and AFP personnel under the Pension and Gratuity Fund is 69.7 billion. Is that correct, sir?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
And this is already 58.7% of the PS, per my computation, the PS being 119.12 billion.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Now, is this a cause of concern? Because to me it is. Considering especially the fact that your capital outlay is only 28.8 and your PS is already 119 billion, but out of the PS, 69.7 billion is for
For pension.
allocation for pension and gratuity for veterans. Now, first question, Mr. Chairman, is what am I correct that this is caused by this is the result of the indexation of the veterans, pensioners' pension to the salary of the existing active personnel?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
That is indexation.
The
And
indexation
siyempre,
is
pag
the-
i-rest mo yung indexation, baka ko ang abuti natin ito. So, no, I'm just kidding. But having said that, um, we are on the, I think you will agree with me that in the next several years, there will be increases in the
Regular force.
military uniform personnel pay and allowances. And as we go on, this will the pension will keep on increasing. When does it cross over, or has it crossed over? Meaning, it would appear to me that at this point we pay more for pension than salary of active personnel. Is that correct? Because from your presentation, it would appear that 58.57% is already for pension, as against 119 billion as total for PS, and therefore we have already 58.57% of our entire PS for pensions. And the first question is, how will this go in the next several years? I assume this will worsen. Do you have a study of how it will turn out in 2021, 22, etc.? In other words, at this stage, we have a Department of National Defense who spends more for pension rather than the salary of those in the active service. So the first question, how will it look after in 2021, 22, and 23? Will it worsen?
Before you respond, with the indulgence of the minority leader, the 119 billion would include civilian personnel, di ba?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Pagka military lang, yung active,
Yeah,
we're talking
oh.
of 115 billion.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And if the actual obligation of the national government, as computed by AFP, GHQ level, ang kailangan nyo actually is hindi naman 69 billion but 99 billion. Ito yung actual obligation. And it has already reached 86% of the PS.
Yes, yes, sir.
If we will use the base figure of 115 billion for uniform.
Uniform.
Yung 119
Yeah, it's only 115, and the pensions and is ready.
is already
99?
yung actual computation nila 99.788 billion.
It is worse than what I said 5 minutes ago.
Which-
It suddenly,
Yeah, which corresponds to 86.71% of the total PS of active military personnel. Tama ba yung mga figures? Kasi we cannot use 119 as the base figure because that includes civilian personnel na hindi naman kasama sa indexation, di ba?
Hindi kasama, sir.
Yeah,
Hindi
kaya
kasama.
nga 115 dapat yung base amount natin, base figure. So, yes, please.
yes,
continue.
115 ang base natin. And is it correct that the pension is already 99 billion?
I think it's in the screen, Sir Chairman, that the 69.7.3, 69.7 billion is actually, or 27%, is part of the 258.3 billion. So, it appears that 69 billion is more than half the 119 million personnel services. But if you remove the civilians, it's even higher. Uh, the question a while ago, Mr. Chairman, is this a cause for concern? It is. In fact, Secretary Dominguez has been toying with an idea to come up with a new pension plan for uniform personnel that will generate money also to cover part of the yearly pension of our retirees.
Uh, Let me clarify the difference
Oh.
between the 69 billion and the 99 billion. Yung 69 billion does not include the following. Yung sinisingil pa rin ng mga pensioners. 23.015 billion for the pension differential for 2018 per joint resolution number 1.
Yes, sir.
Hindi kasama yan.
Yes, sir.
9.745 billion, ito yung pension differential for January to May of 2019 per joint resolution number 1.
Correct, sir. Correct.
5.347 billion as pension arrearages from 2000 to 2013.
Correct,
Diba?
sir. Correct.
2.833 billion lump sum differential per joint resolution number 1. Hindi kasama sa computation, and that's the reason why you came up with 69 billion.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But yung actual obligation, kung talagang babayaran lahat yung as per joint resolution number 1, aabutan talaga ng 99 billion.
99 billion.
Is that a cause for concern? Definitely it is.
It is, sir.
Ang tanong na susunod, anong plano?
Yes. Thank
Sir,
you for
this-
anticipating my notes,
This
Mr.
cannot be addressed immediately because it's in the law. No? The pensions will be provided by the GA, but the pension plan that is being planned by thought by the Secretary of Finance is a period of 30 years that all entries will have a different pension when they reach retirement age. Yung lang mga nasa pukan ngayon ang they will receive this one. So they will be diminishing and diminishing. Plus, itong bagong pension plan, everybody will be contributing to the part of their salary will be contributing to the fund. It will be managed by GSIS. They will put up another body there to manage it specifically for the uniform personnel. And part of the money that will be generated from the lease of military real estate will be put into the seed capital of the pension fund, sir.
Yes, yes, all right, fine, those are in the, on the table as possible remedies. In the meantime, while those remedies are being studied and being implemented, the total obligation, as correctly as pointed out by our chairman, is 99.7 as of 2018 or 2000. I'm sorry, in 2000 by next year, we need 99.7 billion. Now, what will happen after 2020? Have you plotted what will happen in terms of financial obligation to the budget as a result of this pension fund?
Mr. Chairman, after 2020, it will go back to something like 58 billion because
How much?
58 billion. It will go back, sir, because we would have paid the pension arrears for 2018 and 2019, and the payment of pension arrearages of 2000 to 2013, 5.3 billion. And the lump sum differential of JR1 of 2018, which is, pag nabayar na itong taon, these amounts, 23 million, 9 billion, 5 billion, and 2.8 billion next year, then we will go back to 58 billion in the next 2021.
Assuming that this is provided for. But if this is not provided for, then it will
It will
accumulate.
be
Yes.
carried on, but it will
Yes.
not earn interest, Mr. Chairman.
Is it
will just-
provided for this year, the next year, 2020? Magkano bang allocation natin out of this 99 billion? How much is our budget? Is it 69?
Mr. Chairman, we proposed in our budget submission to DBM the magkano yun?
Is it
23.
69.7? No.
Yes, not actually 99.7 because we only included the 15.85 billion and the 23.02 billion differential for 2018 and the 23
So,
ano to? Yeah, 23.4 for 2019 and their arrearages. So I think and it was not approved by DBM. So we will go back to our 58.8 billion as for payment of our veterans.
58.
58 billion, sir.
Uh,
So carry over pa
That's
rin yung arrearages.
58.846, di ba?
That's
Billion.
right, sir.
yan yung hindi provided sa budget nyo ngayon? Or for 2020?
No.
This is not provided in the budget? Is it there?
No, sir. It's only the 58.8 billion.
The 58, only 58.6. I guess to make it simpler, Secretary Lorenzana, assuming that as presented in the National Expenditure Program, we approve your PS and your PS, which includes the allocation for veterans and pensioners. So, first question, how will this look like in 2021? In other words, I would like to see how the financial burden as we go on year by, at least for the next 3 years, because I suspect that, at a certain point, everything will, my chairman is already saying that 86.7% of, if you compare the salary of the active military uniform personnel versus that of the veterans already constitute 86.7. At a certain point, we may become, magko-converge ba ito? Na ngayon, sa tingin mo, nagko-converge
So
na.
the prediction is every year because of the retirees, we will add 1 billion to the pension fund average.
I'm sorry?
1 billion, sir, per year.
1 billion per year. So using that, just when will it cross? Just talking about those in active and those for pensions, insofar as PS is concerned. When will it cross? In other words,
It will take quite some time, Mr. Chairman, for the two amounts to converge. Because by 2029, if there is no indexation, the pension fund will be only 67.538 billion. Kasi 1 billion every year ang ating prediction.
well, I assume this is not the time when we discuss all the details. This has been a problem for the last, I don't know how many years, but we kept on sweeping it under the rug because we could not find a solution. We are looking to your present leadership, Secretary Lorenzana, to finally provide a solution here. Let us bite the bullet because this will not go away. This will not. So we would like the present leadership of the DND to submit to the chair of this subcommittee a definite plan how to solve this. Because if we don't, we become the Department of Pensioners. Because I ask you, in other jurisdictions, are they confronted with the same problem or not?
I have no idea, Mr.
You have
Chairman,
no
but
idea.
maybe they have better systems there in other countries.
Well, anyway, that's neither here nor there. The point is, this all started way back years ago when first we removed the uniform personnel from the GSIS. Also, the PNP followed suit. They removed themselves from the GSIS. So we have a situation today where the pensions are part of the General Appropriations Act. And I do not know. Yeah.
Senator Drilon, pag laging saga umasa, it will not be sustainable.
It will not be sustainable, sir.
We have to have a pension
yes, sir.
plan, pension fund to sustain the pension. Di ba?
We already have one, sir, last, I think early this year. We presented it to the president. But for some reason, it was not pushed through because there were some complaints from the active service. So we're trying to revise the proposed bill so that it will be acceptable to the active person.
I accept, Mr. Secretary, that this cannot be solved in the short term because to fund the past service liabilities of our military uniform personnel would run up to trillions of pesos, bigger than our national budget. Uh, and therefore, this must be solved over a period of time. But unless we start it today, you will never be able to solve this. We must have something that we must have a roadmap. I tell you, this is terrible. You must have a roadmap so that at a certain year in the future, we can look forward to putting this in order rather than make it worse and wait until, I'm reminded, wait for Godot. But I'm serious. I have seen this problem in the last, I don't know, I've been looking at the budget for the last X number of years, and year in and year out, I see the problem getting worse. And no serious effort, I can see that have been put in place. Maraming pong plano rito eh. Maraming plano. But the problem is so huge that we need somebody with the political will to say, this is it. But we must also take into account how our pensioners feel. But we have to find a solution. It has to be a win-win solution, given the environment or the people affected. So what can we expect?
Mr. Chairman,
Secretary?
we are going to submit soon the proposed bill plus the plans, the roadmap to put up self-sustaining pension fund in the future.
Related to the issue being pursued by Senator Drilon, have you conducted an inventory of the assets of the AFP? Kasi ito'y pwedeng source eh.
We have, sir. We have already.
And are we talking of how much?
We have about 210,000 hectares all over the country, and the prime lots are actually 15 properties from Baguio to Cap O'Donnell, Manila, and
Okay. Considering the number of assets, ano, at saka yung kung ano yung worth, would it be enough to sustain on a long-term basis the pension plan of veterans, of retirees?
Not immediately, Mr. Chairman.
At
I
least
think
yung seed money, how much do you foresee?
the seed money, according to Secretary Dominguez, to be self-sustaining, it's about 4 trillion pesos.
That could be self-sustaining,
Yes, sir.
meaning
It can generate its own earning to
So 4
fund.
trillion.
Yes, sir.
Can you submit that immediately so we can craft a bill?
Yes, sir. I will, sir.
Sige.
Yes, sir.
4 trillion
4 trillion pesos, Mr.
for
Chairman.
past service liabilities alone, or is
No,
that
for
what?
future, sir. For future.
I know, but is that's for future would include a provision for past service liabilities. When you say future, yun ba yung current expense lamang for that particular year, or you would already take into account, just like in GS, if it's a pension type of a system, you have to fund past service liabilities, so that you have a fund and not rely on the national budget.
No, Mr. Chairman, we are looking at the future that has nothing to pay at the back. Wala nang back pay. So it is good for the government to pay all the arrearages while we go along, so that when it comes for the pension pension plan to kick in, wala na siyang
Yeah.
utang na babayaran namin.
As I said, Mr. Secretary, this is not the time to discuss it in detail because hindi mo lang tayo we could not even see a common base whether or not the 4 trillion in my mind would include, would be a fund from which you draw future pensions, or is the 4 trillion an allocation for a total liquidation of our arrears. In any case, and for purposes of this discussion, uh, can we expect a definite plan from the executive branch, including particularly the Department of Finance, on this burden? Because let me place a record that in another year or two, the decision, Mr. Chairman, of the Supreme Court, which would increase the IRA, will, will cause again additional burden to the GA. So, and then you have this pension plan. I do not know where we'll be leading. We are not, Senator Lacson and I are not obstructionists, as our friends from the House are saying. We're just trying to figure out how do we get out of this mess before it gets worse. So can we, this has been talked about year in and year out. We have never seen a definite solution, maybe because of the magnitudes. But we're not saying that we solve this overnight. We just want to see down the road that there is a solution. For example, one of the major causes of this is the automatic indexation. Of course, for the record, it is not only automatic indexation in the AFP, in a number of other branches in this government, there is also automatic indexation. But the problem with the AFP is that it's a huge organization, and therefore the financial burden on the budget is much, much heavier than that, for example, of the judiciary. Maliit lang. So, talagang major problem ito. Also, your pension plan, since it is drawn from the national budget, is non-contributory. Di ba? So, yan, problema din yan. And of course, this is something also that you have to accept, the early retirement of our uniformed personnel at 56. Whereas the civilian personnel would be at 65, you are at 56. And since 1987, or 86, when I joined government, that's already been a problem. Nobody could touch that retirement age because it can cause problems down the line. I know that. So, but maybe long-term solutions can be put in place so that those new entrants, for example, to the armed forces, can have can retire later than 56, and they are not prejudiced because that is the condition at the time of entry. The only problem that imposing it now, or those who are already in the service, is that they complain that when I entered the service, this was the retirement pay or retirement age. Why are you now increasing it? So that one of the solutions is to make the increase in the pension age longer than 56, but only applicable to new entrants. So that this is long term, but it is part of the problem, and therefore must be made part of the solution. We cannot hide from this. So this is a task that is not easy to do, but for the sake of our finances in government, we must solve this. This concerns all of us, because if we cannot solve this, you'll have a lot of other programs which will be sacrificed or funded, or the funding will be sacrificed in order to fund the pension requirements of the uniformed personnel. It's not your fault. It's just there. And it's not time for finger pointing. We just have to look for a solution. Given this, can we come up with a comprehensive plan and a timetable, Mr. Lorenzana, to look into
Yes, sir.
solve this problem?
Mr. Chairman, can I make a statement, sir? We already have a plan and a program last Congress, but for some reason it was not pushed through. So all we have to do is dig it up and make some revision, and we can submit it, sir. And, by the way, the 4 trillion seed capital includes the armed forces, the PNP, the BGMP, the Coast Guard,
All military uniformed personnel.
Yes, sir. So that's why we need so much.
Yeah,
If
I
only the
know, but
AFP,
the
yeah.
more important question there is this a seed money from where you draw future pensions?
Correct,
Or-
Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry?
Correct. We have to
This
draw
is a seed money.
to draw pension from.
Yeah, okay. Like a pension fund that was supposed to be established by virtue of this very old law, di ba? My pension, which got screwed up by a lot of other problems that we face along the way. So we would expect this, and I think you have to involve the Department of Finance. You cannot do this alone.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry to ask you this, but when can we have this? And because you may need legislation.
We really need legislation, sir. We really need legislation for this.
You need
Kailangan natin
legislation.
ng batas dito.
For example, on the retirement age, I'm sure.
Yeah, retirement age also.
Yeah. So, again, I would repeat, bago ba ang susunod na budget hearing natin, meron na tayong plano rito? Baka
Yes,
naman sa
sir,
dulo, ha?
I can submit it in a month's time, the plan.
In a month's time.
Yes, sir.
Including a proposed bills
Bill,
that would
meron na
have
kaming
to
bill
be
actually, sir.
made
We
into
already
law.
have a bill. Yeah. What I have to do is revise it somewhat so that it will satisfy some of the complaints of the active service.
All right.
Senator Tolentino is
Just
recognized.
as an added input, Mr. Chair. I can still recall,
I cannot hear you.
I was a member of the cabinet then when the president suggested that the real estate plan would be relative to a lease scheme. So perhaps the good secretary can submit his proposal, because real estate, when we look at real estate, these are exhaustible assets of the armed forces. So I think the proposed legislation suggested by Senator Lacson should include your whether it is lease, use of frac, outright sale, should include that portion, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Well, yes, but the amounts required are so huge that we must be able to open up ourselves to all possible sources of funding, because at the end of the day, it's a zero-sum game. Whether it's in real estate or in cash, at the end of the day, you need funding in order that we can solve this problem. Pero naman yan ang problema, we cannot just print money. But we must, so anyway, let us leave it at that. As I said, I don't think that this is that we have enough time here to analyze it. But I plead with you, Mr. Secretary, submit your plan as early as possible so that hopefully when the 18th Congress would expire, we would have something in the books and look forward to solve this problem even on the long term. And subject to revision as we come along. But at least may nakikita tayong solution at we see the light at the end of the tunnel, so-called, so that we can solve this. Thank you very much. Just on two or three other issues. Okay. During the hearing of the Department of Finance, we raised the issue of the loans and grants that were suspended because of this issue on the inquiry by the UN on the human rights in the country. The Secretary of Finance said he's only aware, or at least in his shop, he's only aware of 2 loans that will be prejudiced as a result of this. This is the 21 million euro, 21 million euros loan from France for DOTR, and an ODA of 46 million US dollars from Germany for climate change in the DNR. I would like to know from your shop, Mr. Secretary, what are those negotiations pending, which will be affected by the suspension of the negotiations for ODA and loans insofar as the armed forces is concerned, and what is the effect, and what are you doing, and what is the effect if that loan or those items are indeed rescinded?
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman, we are currently in talks with the Australian government for them to build our 6 offshore patrol vessels. And they are willing to finance it first, and they will pay it in a span of many years, amortize it accordingly. Now, I said in my statement when I was asked by the media what I think about the memo of the president, I said we will comply with the memo, but I will ask for some exemptions if there is a need to do it. And I would like maybe to make it clear that now that we would like to get exemption for Australia. Now, the
How
beauty,
much is this?
it's about 30 billion pesos, Mr. Chair.
And is this a loan or a grant?
It's a loan, actually. It's a
It's
loan.
a-
It's
it's
a
a
loan
loan,
because they are going to finance first, and then we'll pay it
The very soft loans.
soft loan. Oh, yes, sir.
And just again, I didn't hear you. This is for
For the offshore patrol vessel
offshore patrol vessel.
for the Navy.
Okay, what else is, if any?
That's all, Mr. Chair. But we'll go back to the OPVs from Australia. These ships actually will be built in Cebu because Austal Australia has a branch in Cebu,
Uh-huh.
and they are employing a lot of Filipinos there. In fact, their employees there are 95% Filipino. And if we give it to them, they will employ more Filipinos. I think this is a very good case to be exempted from the memo of the president.
All right. So you have. So this is the only item in your shop.
That's
that
the
is-
only item, Mr. Chair.
And
Yes.
have you requested for an exemption as you have announced?
And that's it, sir, but I will make it soon. Because we are still talking with the Australians. I have just written them a letter that we would like to avail of financing from the government of Australia, and they have not yet replied to me. Once I get that reply, then I will have to get exemption from the president.
So this is the benefit is two-pronged.
Yes,
One,
sir.
it will benefit the armed forces, and number two, it will benefit our shipbuilding economy because this will be done in Cebu, as you have mentioned.
Yes, sir.
Hopefully, the president will reconsider insofar as the DFD is concerned.
I am almost certain that he will, Mr. Chair, because it will benefit our people.
You have no option if your request for exemption is disapproved.
The option is to how to bid it and then have it built by other. The option, Mr. Chair, is first we have to get the money first from DBM. The 30 billion pesos should be available. So that
30,
we
how
can-
much? 30?
30 billion.
30
30
B.
billion. But for the Australian deal, we are only required to pay 10% of the initial payment, and they will start building.
Okay, so other than that, wala na.
Wala na, sir. Wala na.
That's as far as loans, how about aid and grants? Walang
I'm
tatamaan
not
dyan.
I'm not aware of anything, sir. So
Okay.
it's an,
On another topic, and I think this is the last on my notes, Mr. Chair, the matter of the Miss Latel AFP agreement. Again, you were quoted in the newspapers as saying that, or expressing some concern about this. Can you describe on the record what exactly it is, just to get an accurate background on this issue?
Yes, Mr. Chair. The issue of Ms. Latil came up when it came out in the news that the Armed Forces of the Philippines, Chief of Staff, signed an agreement with Ms. Latil to have their towers in military camps and reservations. So I said that I'm going to look at it, scrutinize it closely, and I'm going to make my decision to find out. But I said that I will decide on the interests of our country. The document is now in my office, Mr. Chair, and I have not yet. I still have to wait. I have still to receive the recommendation of our legal officers, legal sections, and after I see that, then I will decide even if I sign or not. But in addition, the additional information on the Ms. Latil AFP MOA is that the towers of Ms. Latil will only be collocated to where Globe and Smart towers are already located.
Can you repeat that? The Mislatel Tower will be in the areas where the Globe and
And
Smart
are located.
are located.
Yes, sir.
Well,
There are 130 place locations that are all over the country that belongs to the armed forces, where the Globe and Smart are also
Which have been there
Since
since
the-
the 2000s, di ba?
since
Mga
2000.
year
They've been there since 2000.
Yeah.
I, I guess the issue cropped up because uh, the joint venture partner of Ms. Latel
Is Chinatel.
is Chinatel.
Yes, sir.
And the Chinese government has or controls Chinatel, which is different from the situation of Globe and Smart, which are purely private entities, even if they have foreign equity. Like I think Globe would have Singtel. I don't think Singtel has any connection with the Singapore government. That is the concern. Yes, they will be located only in areas where Globe and Smart are located. But that means, Mr. Secretary, that the Chinese government will have 130 listening posts. Is that inside our camp? Is that a fair assessment? Is that fear founded?
I'm not sure if it's fair, Mr. Chair, because the way it was explained to me is that Chinatel is only a minority investor in Ms. Latel. Ms. Latel is still Filipino company.
Yes, 40% is
Yeah.
what we understand.
I think it's 30%, sir.
Or less, whatever.
Oh.
But certainly, we all know that there are certain public utilities here in our country where China is the joint venture partner, but in effect, they are in the day-to-day operation. I don't have to mention the companies, but that's of public knowledge among those who are in the know. That is why, even if, okay, so 40%, theoretically, they are a minority. But there can be what we call technical service agreements. There are many kinds of agreements which we lawyers would love to craft and to go around the minority position. I guess that's the cause of concern. And you cannot blame the public for having that kind of a concern, given our relationship with China and the Spratly and West Philippine Sea issues, the concern that the Chinese government is present alone inside our military camps is something that should be addressed, Mr. Secretary.
I'm going to look into this again, Mr. Chair. I have to talk to the GHQ, to those people who are in charge with these facilities. Where are they, and how are they located in the camps? But the fear actually may be unfounded because Globe and Smart are also using Huawei systems in their in the running of their telephones.
We know that Globe particularly have Singtel. But huh?
Huawei. They have Huawei systems. They are
Huawei.
using Huawei.
Not equity. Do they have equity there?
They have not equity, but they have the equipment.
Huh?
They have equipment
It's
components.
supply component siguro, which they can terminate at any time, not equity. I'm not aware that Huawei has equity in Globe. They may be a supplier of Globe, but not equity where they participate where they can participate in the day-to-day affairs. Anyway, but anyway, who signed the deal? Well, you appear not to have prior information of this, and now you're just telling us, in fact, that you now have the agreement on your desk, implying that you didn't know the agreement before it was signed.
Mr. Chair, these agreements happen less this way. First, GHQ will process it, and it will be signed by the Chief of Staff. After he signs it, he transmits it to me. That's the time when I will study the matter. Hindi ako sasabihan na mayroon kami dito, what do you think? No, because they have to decide on themselves. And it will be provided to me for approval.
The two parties signed the MOA already.
Yes, sir. They
So
already signed
finalized
it.
na yung MOA.
Finalized na.
So assuming that you disapprove, what will happen to the MOA?
It will be disapproved.
Rescinded.
It's dead. Oh.
Let's clarify that. You said the MOA has been signed.
By the two
The two parties.
parties.
The Philippines is represented by the AFP,
AFP Chief of Staff.
Chief of Staff. Is that binding on us?
I think not yet, because it has to come to me to be approved. It says there down the line is approval of the Chief of the Secretary
So
of Defense.
the deal is not yet effective?
Not yet, sir. Not yet. They are waiting for my approval to go ahead.
Okay, that gives us some comfort, Mr. Secretary.
I have a question, Mr. Chair, because the franchise of this Miss Latil was approved by Congress.
No, the franchise.
The franchise, yes.
And I dissented, I know you.
Yeah. Now, if there are questions about the ownership, why did the Congress approve it?
Sir, the 40% equity is allowed under our laws. All right.
Correct.
I guess the issue now that confronts the DND is the security issue, not the legality of the 40% equity of China Telecom. You know, the 40% is valid. The concern is, ang dami namang mapaglagyan dito ng mga towers yan, bakit doon pa sa loob ng kampo? Yun po ang tanong ng mga tao na kinakabahan because of the present day situation that we have in the West Philippine Sea and the incursions which you yourself have been very consistent in exposing, including passing through our lanes without notice, etc. And yet, here it is, with China government being 40% equity, having towers right in the military camps, and 130 towers at that, potentially. So this is the cause of concern, not the legality of the 40%, but the fact of the location of the towers inside our military camps.
Yeah.
So that should, and again, as I said, it gives us some comfort that that it is not yet approved.
Approved.
Which means, Mr. Secretary, that there can be amendments. No, kaya nga, tinatanong ko, sabi niya, hindi pa final eh.
Let's see.
Hindi eh, nandiyan na. We have a situation where you have already assigned MOA before you. Can it be amended, Mr. Secretary?
I think it can still be amended, Mr. Chair. Yeah.
Even if
I am the approving authority anyway, so I can remand it back to the HQ.
Mr. Secretary, doon ba sa 130 towers ng Globe and Smart, was it approved by the Secretary of National Defense?
Yes, sir. It was approved.
It was approved.
It was approved.
Yeah. So here, it's pending your approval, and I trust that you will exercise your good judgment to have amendments where you find it contrary to our national security and national interest, Mr. Secretary.
I will act according to our national interests, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, so when do you expect to act on this?
Soon, Mr. Chair.
Like who?
Like in a week's time.
Like
In a week's time.
in a week's time. And so we have a week to pray. Isang linggo tayo magdadasal nito, Mr. Secretary. All right. Would the MOA be a document that can be furnished to the committee?
I think, yes, sir. It's not secret.
It can be.
It's not restricted, so it can. We can.
If it's not restricted,
It's
can you
we
provide
will
the secretary or
submit
the
to
chairman with a
copy to the
you know,
chairman.
So that it is in the public. Can we have a copy of this before your approval, Mr. Lorenzana?
Yes, sir. We will submit,
You sure?
including the MOA for the Globe and the Smart.
Yes, yes,
Para
yes, of
makita
course,
ninyo
in
yung
fairness.
pareha. Yes, sir. Public document.
So, bakit gusto nila sa kampo magtayo ng tower nila?
It is for security reasons, Mr. Chair, because
Huh?
because so many towers were being blown up by the EPA before. So Globe and Smart asked the EPA if they can collocate in areas na secured. Not all towers of the two telcos are inside camps. Only those yung malapit na may kampo kami sa isang lugar na kailangan doon, nilagay sila.
Eh, meron din dito kami sa Senado ng tower ng
Yes, sir. So,
Globe at saka Smart. Now, from the Miss Latel,
Yeah, before we leave the topic, Senator Dillon, compensatory ba ito? May kikitain ba yung armed forces? Para naman may pakinabang. If and when you finally approve.
there is no
getting nothing.
money involved, but I think we will be given some usage of airtime, cell phones, yes. Yung paggamit ng kanila, yung service.
you are like connecting your whatever that is to Beijing.
You're leasing, leasing quote unquote, a portion of your real estate, di ba?
I think there's no.
Wouldn't it be practical and fair that you get some compensation at least doon sa portion na inoccupy nila?
I think the way I understand it is there is none, Mr. Chair. They just allow to put up there, and then they give the detachment of the camp that are where the tower is located to some benefits in the use of their services.
Unang-una, wala silang gasto sa mga LGU. Hindi na sila maglalabi or maglalagay para para kumuha ng mga permits, di ba? Kasi kampo eh. So ang laki ng menos. Why don't you require them to at least compensate man lang, at least yung usage for the use of the.
Yes, sir. We are going to look into that so that makinabang naman yung armed forces.
Tama.
But treat everybody the same. The Globe and Smart,
And Smart.
for all the
Yes, sir.
hundreds of millions, if not billions, of profit they earn, they should pay what is due the armed forces if they're indeed using part of public land.
Yes, sir.
So
Yes, sir, Mr.
we
Chair.
hope to. Anyway, we'll wait for a copy of the MOA, Mr. Secretary.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Pa mababaw yung kaligayahan kung cellphone lang yung.
Or yung services ng yung Globe, or meron yata silang binibigay na time, number of hours to use every month, at saka yung internet, meron silang internet na baka
Sige. We talk about the security issue of the Miss Latel. let's talk about the security issue posed by the presence of the pogos near the military camps. That was also raised. First, maybe these are you referring to the pogos situated in military camps in where are these? Quezon City, principally.
Uh, in Eastwood City, which is just beside.
Eastwood, yes.
Yes. And then in Villamor, in I think Soler near Villamor, in at the Island Cove
In Cavite.
in Cavite, which is
Yeah.
near our Sangli base, and also in Subic,
Oh, ma-
just beside the airport, the airstrip, meron dong pogo operation.
Mr. Secretary, you are concerned about the security issues of the Pogo. Shouldn't you be more concerned about the towers, communication towers, right inside our camps? If a concern of the Pogos near our military camps merits a re-examination, I would like to think that the presence of the towers right inside the camp should be a more serious concern.
Mr. Chair, the Pogos, I think this different here. Because the Pogos, there are people there in the area. Sometimes there are several hundreds of them going around the area. In the towers, I don't see any Chinese going there to man the towers.
Yeah, because they stay in Beijing.
Oh.
The Chinese will just stay there and listen, guys.
How are they going to listen when it is just a transmitter? It transmit the signal from one cell site to another. It's a repeater.
Sige. But anyway, so what is the status of this concern that you raised insofar as the location of the focus are concerned?
According to the PAGCOR and some of the agencies, they are not a threat because according to them, they are just employees of Philippine companies running POGOs. Remember that these POGOs are not Chinese companies. They are Philippine companies who hire Chinese to man the Pogo machines because their clients are Chinese.
Sir, maybe they are Philippine companies registered with the SEC, but I am sure that the equity or the stock holding is held by Chinese citizens. Imposible po na ang mga equity nito ay hawak ng Filipino businessmen. That's we're kidding ourselves. These Pogo companies are yes, it may be possible that it is registered in the name of Philippine registered or licensed companies. But I can assure you that the equity are Chinese businessmen at the very least. So PAGCOR is pulling your leg when they say that this is controlled by Philippine companies. The fact is, all of them are Chinese personnel manning all of these communication booths. So, your concern is not exactly misplaced insofar as the security angle is concerned.
Yes, sir, you may be right, sir, but it's beyond our competence to really verify if they are really the equity is Chinese or Filipino.
So, notwithstanding your concern, the operation of the POGOs around and near your camps would proceed.
That's the reason why I recommended that they should be brought somewhere else around, far from camps. Maybe sa isang compound sila lahat nandun sila. How? And they will be there. So that we can control the movements, control the people going in and out, and also so that the Department of Finance can collect taxes from these people who are working here.
Okay, I think that is all for this representation. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Senator Francis.
Given the statements coming from Secretary Lorenzana, I think we have to commend the good secretary for bringing it out in the national consciousness. First, I recall the Fuga Island issue. Si Secretary Lorenzana yon. Without stating that, hindi na malalaman natin yan. And then, this Pogo incident also coming from Secretary Lorenzana. And he has been very consistent when it comes to our relationship with China, giving his sometimes Lone Ranger views. I don't know how it would appear to the diplomatic community, but I think we have to commend Secretary Lorenzana for giving that independent voice within an independent foreign policy. And we thank you for that.
Can we move on to another topic? The revised AFP modernization program. This was initially funded in 2014 while it was enacted in 2012. Napondohan lang ng DBM ito 2014. I think meron diyang sunset provision. After 5 years, we will revisit and find out because as initially envisioned, uh, ang focus nito is internal security threat, but it should have the capability to shift towards addressing internal and external. So question, how are we or where are we dito sa revised modernization? DBM has already released sa record nila, and this is another question, 124 billion na since 2014 ang nare-release ng DBM. This is per DBM data. But sa AFP data, 126.9 billion. So bakit may difference ng 2 billion plus? Yung record ng DBM saka ng AFP, magkaiba. Before you respond, the Chair acknowledges the presence of Senator Pangilinan. Morning, sir. Yeah, please respond. 124 billion per DBM, 126 billion per AFP. Where are we?
The difference in the amount, Mr. Chair, is kanang siguro ito some of the projects that have not been listed. But where are we? I think we are moving along pretty well because we are getting some substantial amount of support from the government to pursue our modernization program. We still have a long way to go to complete the equipment complement of the Philippine Air Force and the Philippine Navy because they are the ones that are getting the lion's share of the modernization program. And we hope that next year we can procure some more of our equipment, sir.
Yung utilization ng 124 or 126 billion, somehow has it modernized the armed forces?
Very much, Mr. Chair. It is bringing in newer equipment to our troops and not only the
Because I
Army.
was the one who sponsored and defended yung 10349, ano?
Yes, sir.
The goal actually, the ability to have a minimum credible defense posture. Have we reached such a status?
Not yet,
Minimum
Mr. Chair.
credible defense posture.
Not yet, sir. We cannot yet say that we have a credible defense posture because we cannot defend our maritime domain as yet, absent our capital ships that are being made at present.
So what do we do now? Do we adjust the goals? Or do we catch up with the goals as envisioned?
We have to catch up, sir. We should not revise the goal, but we should catch up with our capital assets procurement.
So how far are we from reaching that goal? Yung minimum credible defense posture. Kasi compared to our ASEAN neighbors, we're at near bottom, di ba?
Yes, sir, that is true. We are still on horizon to Mr. Chair. This up to the end of 2022. And maybe up to that, then we can say we have achieved maybe 80% of our target of being a credible defense posture.
Kasi iba na labanan ngayon, di ba? Dahil pati sa intelligence, it's less human intelligence, more signal or even electronic intelligence. So have we progressed along that line? Without mentioning specifics.
Yes, sir. I think we have progress on that, sir. We are procuring a lot of those equipment now.
How?
How do we procure, sir?
How have we progressed?
How we progress? We have received several deliveries already of this equipment by our intelligence people.
And we're addressing external threat more than the internal threats, no?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So ang next question is, do we need to revise the provisions of 10349? Kasi merong sunset dyan to revisit after 5 years. And since it was passed in 2012, although ang funding dumating 2014, it's been 5 years since then. So maybe we may need to revisit and amend again to adjust to your requirements and to adapt to the present situation.
Yes, sir. That would be good, sir, to revisit and adjust.
Kasi hindi pa rin ganito ka-intense yung situation sa West Philippine Sea when we passed
That's true, sir.
yung
Yes, sir.
Republic Act
Yes, sir.
10349. So maybe we should make some adjustments to conform to such a situation. Diba?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Senator Pangilinan is recognized.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Secretary Lorenzana, Lieutenant General Clement, and to the rest of the Armed Forces of the Philippines and the Department of National Defense. Magandang umaga po. I apologize for being late. I was in another hearing of the budget of the Department of Agriculture, and I just stepped out so that I can join this committee hearing. And we'd like to thank Senator Lacson for allowing us a few questions. This matter has already been touched earlier by our minority leader, the matter of the DITO Memorandum of Agreement that was signed by your predecessor, Lieutenant General Clement, before he stepped down. I understand that first that the Secretary is still in the process of reviewing the contract, and it was also placed on record, as I understand it correctly, that he was not informed of this until after the MOA had been signed. But that the same MOA has been presented to you, or at least forwarded to you for your approval.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes, I just find that a bit odd that there was a public statement of the MOA signing when in fact the Secretary had yet to go through and scrutinize the contract. But I hope there was no attempt at forcing the hand of Secretary Lorenzana to approve on the premise, or at least on the because it had already been reported in the media and publicly announced as a done deal. It looked like it was a done deal, at least perception-wise, Mr. Secretary. But we're thankful that on record, the Secretary has said that he is still reviewing this and that he has the power to approve or disapprove the said.
Yes, sir. Yes, Mr. Chair.
We're also thankful, Mr. Chairman, that on record, the Secretary has agreed to submit, or at least give us a copy, the Senate, of the MOA, so that the Senate can also be apprised of the situation. We are interested precisely, Mr. Secretary, because in another how do you call it, contract or transaction, but this time involving the Secretary of Interior and Local Government, Secretary Anyo, and this is the CCTV 30 billion project allocation or project for Metro Manila. In that project, Mr. Chairman, Secretary Anyu was saying that he is also reviewing the contract because there were some provisions that he found wanting. For example, he mentioned that, the DILG 20 billion surveillance system project by China International Telecommunications and Construction Corporation, an affiliate of state-owned China Telco. um, the proposed surveillance system sought to install 12,000 or seeks to install 12,000 CCTV cameras to be provided by Huawei. And it was Secretary Anyo who said, for example, that there were some provisions that he was concerned about if in case of a dispute in the said contract. For example, there was a provision that said that Hong Kong would be where a dispute should be settled, no? Or at least arbitration proceedings in Hong Kong. He found that objectionable. I'm saying this, Mr. Chairman, because and Secretary, because that's precisely why we'd like to see and take a look at the memorandum of agreement. Because, as was mentioned also earlier, I think there was a point raised by the minority leader that the Secretary of National Defense had expressed his concern regarding POGO, but that the difference between the POGO operations near military installations and the at least this is my understanding, correct me if I didn't understand it correctly, but the telecommunication equipment near military camps, the POGO involves actual human beings, but the installation will only be utilizing equipment. Except that we know, and our concern is, this equipment can actually be surveillance equipment, or maybe even more intelligent than human beings, artificial intelligence in that regard. No? So that is a concern. But having said that, Mr. Chairman, and considering that the contract will be submitted to the Senate, may we inquire if he is inclined to submit this anytime soon? When will it be submitted? Was there a manifestation, Secretary?
Mr. Chair, I can submit that within this week.
Okay.
Those three contracts, Mr. Taylor, D2, Globe, and Smart, so that you can also see how those contracts were signed before.
Yes. Of course, well, maybe also inquire if this good secretary is familiar with the Five Eyes, the countries involved, the Intelligence Alliance. Yes, the Five Eyes.
Yes, Five Eyes, Australia, Malaysia,
Canada, New
Singapore,
Zealand,
Canada, New
United
Zealand.
Kingdom, and the United States.
Yes.
Countries are parties to a multilateral agreement, a treaty for joint cooperation on signals intelligence. Intelligence gathering by interception of signals, whether communications between people or from electronic signals not directly used in communication. So this is the Five Eyes. And the Secretary is familiar with this Intelligence Alliance. We are not part of this Intelligence Alliance.
We are not part of that, Mr. Chair.
Yes. The reason why I raise this is because perhaps in your review you can also take this into consideration, and perhaps you may use our relations, our good relations with other countries as you review the said contract. Because the US, Australia, and New Zealand have banned the use of Huawei technology in their 5th generation or 5G networks over national security concerns. This has been reported. The UK, in the meantime, limited Huawei to contribute to non-core 5G infrastructure, such as antennas. Canada, on the other hand, has postponed its decision to ban or limit Huawei operations until after its elections in October. So there is a growing concern with of course, the Five Eyes would be, I'd like to think, the most advanced in terms of cybersecurity technology in the world. And for them to raise these concerns, I'm sure we may be able to learn a thing or two as you go through and review, Secretary, the contract. May we also place on record that in the U.S., AT&T and Verizon have banned Huawei phones from their networks, and that Langley Intelligence Group Network, or LIGNET, a US-based service providing global intelligence and forecasting, uh, uh, their former CIA national security officers raised concerns about electronic backdoors in Huawei and ZTE Telecom's components. And according to LIGNET, for the record, these companies can, quote unquote, remotely access communications technology that could disable a country's telecommunications infrastructure before a military engagement, or steal technology and trade secrets. So hopefully this will guide the good secretary when he reviews these contracts. The other question, Mr. Chairman, is pending our review, or at least the submission and our review, will may we request perhaps that the secretary first, maybe during the budget debates, I might have additional questions after we go through the contract and review it. And so we will wait for the submission. And out of courtesy, perhaps, for a co-equal, the executive and the legislative branch, maybe we can defer approval of this until such time that we've been able to raise additional questions, if the questions would be forthcoming. In other words, if we see there is nothing wrong with it, then there is no reason for us to object to the said arrangement or the said contracts, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Secretary.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Just another micro policy questions, Mr. Chair, before I leave for the Marawi hearing. There has been news coming from the National Security Advisor on the possibility of putting up several lighthouses in several islands protruding to the West Philippine Sea and perhaps in northern Luzon. But I don't see that place in the budget. Is this now a policy direction of the department, hand in hand with what I've seen, not just from the news, but from the Philippine Navy, that there are now mini Marines detachment in place in Batanes, and then the other one is, and this is a good move, in an island in Tawi-Tawi, to probably serve as our lookout points for the prevention of the two Chinese naval bases that pass through that strait. Is this now a policy direction of the department to set up several small or mini detachments in far-flung, hitherto unoccupied places for marine bases? Because if that is a policy now of the department, I would propose that we set up several. I would propose that we set up some in the Calayan Island groups. I would propose that we set up one apart from the Oyster Bay proposed base, one in an area beyond that bay. I would propose that we set up one near the portion of east of Luzon, where Benham Rice is located, especially if we take into consideration the statement made by Admiral Liu Huaqing, the alleged mastermind of China's modern naval strategy in 1982, but that by 2020, and that is next year, they would want to have that second island chain occupied, that is of Luzon, where Benham Rice is located, and probably Ogasawara Islands near Guam. So is this now a policy direction of the DND? But this is not contained in your budget. But if this is probably a policy direction, I would support the establishment of several mini detachments for Marines in the Philippine Navy that would probably include a small airstrip, a small wharf, and a bigger contingent, bigger than the one set up in Batanes. I forgot the name, Mabulis, wherein you have just a 14-man contingent. So that's my question. If that is now a policy direction, Mr. Chair, that should be part of the budgetary proposals of the Department of National Defense. Your floor, Mr. Secretary.
Mr. Chair, the Philippine Coast Guard submitted a proposal to build lighthouses in, I think, 8 features in the northern Luzon, including Mabulis, where our marine detachment is. But because dumating ng late yung proposal nila, although approved by the President, but it's not palagay ko, hindi nakasama sa budget ng Coast Guard yun eh. So that's how it is now, how to produce the money.
So
Because
the Marines, Mr. Secretary, are just co-located in that Coast Guard facility, or
there's only one marine detachment there, Mr. Chair, in which in Mabulis. We have yet to establish other presence in other islands in Babuyan area and Batanes. Mabulis actually is the northernmost island of the Philippines. It's very near Taiwan already.
what about, Mr. Chair, the Tawi-Tawi? Island,
Tawi-Tawi,
wherein the Marines now, a small island where the Marines are now located.
for the information of the chair and the members of the committee, all small islands in the Tawi-Tawi Island group are occupied by Marines already, including the southernmost island of the Philippines called Pangwan. We have 7 Marines there in the detachment. And I think that's the reason why this has been a very steep decline of kidnapping in that area since about 2 years ago, because wala nang pagtaguan yung mga kidnappers doon. So lahat ng island doon meron ng naka-detachment na Marines.
Mr. Chair, my question is this now a policy of the department? Because my relative to that would be the question of sustainability. I am sure the question of fresh drinking water would be part of the next proposal. You should have a small desalination equipment there. Sanang iinom ng tubig yun. Di ba? And these are matters that will likewise interlink with our disaster preparedness program. So, polisiya na ba ho ito? At kung
Yes,
talagang
yes, sir.
policy na
Yes,
ito,
sir.
wala
It's
sa
a
budget.
policy. In fact,
And you intend to set up more small detachments for that matter, Mr. Secretary?
for Tawi-Tawi is already naka-impress na sila doon. There's no need to add some more because lahat ng islands doon occupied na. For the resupply, I think our troops have some source of water dahil hindi naman sila nagreklamo. For next program maybe is to put up detachments in the islands in Babuyan and Batanes dahil wala pang mga tropa doon.
But for the West Philippine Sea and the other existing detachment in Zambales, San Antonio, or San Miguel, meron po sa budget.
Okay yun, Mr. Chair, but for the West Philippine Sea, partly, we are actually occupying 8 islands. Pang-siyam yung Ayungin eh. But all of those islands have marine personnel. Lahat yun, meron. Ayungin, meron din tayo. Doon sa may nagsumadsad na Sierra Madre.
And
We have-
Benham Rice, my previous question.
Benham Rice, wala kasing feature doon, Mr. Chair. So, but the nearest one there is maybe Pulilio Island or some of the Santa Ana, yung Santa Ana in Cagayan. That is the
Mr.
nearest.
Secretary, with due respect, I've been saying several times, and for the end time, I've been saying that there is an island used to be occupied by the Americans right in front of Virac, Bagamanok, wherein there is a small airstrip. There is even a dilapidated golf course now occupied by informal settlers, and this will just need a small renovation on the part of the Air Force, perhaps. So you might as well look at this. This is not a feature. This is an island. This is a barangay in Catanduanes. And that probably can serve as a
okay.
lookout for the Benham Rice, Mr.
Okay,
Chair.
so this is near Pulilio Island.
In Catanduanes. Pulillo is in Quezon.
Catanduanes. Okay. Okay, we will look into that, Mr. Chair, because the National Security Advisor was actually talking about an old airstrip also of the Americans in Pulilio Island, somewhere there in facing Benham Rice. And he was recommending that could be a good launching
So you can have two.
area. So, Maybe we can have two, Mr. Chair.
No further questions, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Senator Pangilinan, recognized.
I'd like to go back to a previous, I just remembered an additional document or perhaps a report that may be available, Mr. Chairman, if I may be allowed to go back to the earlier points that I was raising. Secretary Lorenzana, we were monitoring some of the statements of the Armed Forces of the Philippines on the matter of DITO communications. At nabanggit, I forget who said it, but ang nabanggit is that we went through a stringent security risk analysis report, risk analysis review of the contract and the arrangement. If there is a copy of that, apart from the agreement itself, could we also have a copy of the risk analysis report, if there is any? Meron po ba?
GSQ. G6.
J2.
J2.
J2. Risk analysis.
Risk analysis assessment of D2. There's no written one, Mr. Chair.
Well, okay, but perhaps you can include in the submission what went through in terms of the risk analysis, what was undertaken. If there is no report, maybe
We will, Mr. Chair.
so that we have a better sense of how we, prepared for for the technology that is now being that will be allowed, to be set up in our military camps. I think that would be essential or fundamental that we do have a risk analysis, and that on the basis of the risk analysis, I would like to think they made a recommendation that it would be safe and secure, and our and national security will, kasi sabi po, our national security will not be compromised by such installations. Unless our basis only would be that because we were reassured by DITO that they will not be involved in intelligence gathering, you and I will agree, Secretary, that that is not enough. And that we have to have maybe even an independent, apart from the armed forces going through its own cybersecurity risk assessment, maybe an independent entity should have undertaken the same. I don't know. That's why I'd like to see the memorandum of agreement as well, Mr. Secretary. With that, Mr. Chairman, and the commitment of the Secretary that he will include in his submission matters pertaining to the risk assessment and analysis of the setting up of the said telecommunication equipment. In fact, my understanding is that, Mr. Chairman, part of the payment to the Armed Forces of the Philippines for this memorandum of agreement would be equipment from DITO Communications. Kasama daw dun sa bayad na paggamit ng military installations or at least areas would be the equipment from China Telco, and DITO Communications. So that too should be part of the risk assessment, I'd like to think. And one final point, Mr. Chairman, pending the submission, and perhaps if we might be raising some questions, maybe not, depending on what we see dun ho sa memorandum of agreement. Baka some of the questions that we might eventually ask would have a national security consideration. So perhaps at the proper time, Mr. Chairman, we might request for an executive session of the committee if it is so warranted, and of course with the okay of our chair. For the record, Mr. Chairman. For the record, the chairman nodded. Maraming salamat. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Pangilinan. Since you mentioned that you are manning 8 to 9 features in the West Philippine Sea, I'd like to know if, because China or the Chinese military has been quite open in announcing the application of their cabbage strategy in the West Philippine Sea. I'd like to find out if we have a counter strategy because you're familiar, di ba, with the cabbage
Yes, sir.
strategy, yung layer upon layer until magutom yung mga troops na they would not want to go back there anymore. So, are we encountering problems in our resupply of this?
We used to
These are
encounter
Philippine
them.
Marines, di ba, nandun?
We used to encounter
Okay.
them, Mr. Chair. I think about before the president took over in June 2016. Mayroong problema ganun. But after that, our supply can go there unimpeded by the Chinese Coast Guard or the Chinese PLA Navy. Wala natin problema. Even our repair in Pag-asa, our ships or barges that are bringing the materials are not being molested by the Chinese.
No disruptions, no
None, sir.
pressure.
None, sir. None, sir.
So okay lang, free-flowing yung
Yes,
resupply natin
yes,
doon.
yes,
And
Mr.
you can ship personnel with no problem at all.
Yes, sir, because they are regularly replaced naman eh.
Yeah, okay.
Regularly
That's good to
replaced.
hear.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
on that note, just a follow-up and perhaps an update. We also read statements by the Secretary regarding the entry of Chinese vessels, communication in Ayungin. What is the latest? Were they fishing vessels or communication?
As the latest report that I got yesterday, Mr. Chair, is that there is one Chinese Coast Guard about 4 to 5 kilometers away from or nautical miles away from Ayungin. That's all that we're seeing for the past couple of days.
But previous to that, there were reports that there was, my understanding is there was an agreement, or at least a agreement between your counterpart in China, that there should be prior notice when they enter or go through our waters, but that such agreement was not being complied with, or at least.
Mr. Chair, we have no agreement. That statement I got from the Chinese ambassador. He told me that he will talk to the PLA Navy so that they will inform him that there are ships of this Chinese Navy passing so that he can inform us, the AFP. But the last time I saw him, ay mukhang hindi rin siya sinasama ng loop ng PLA Navy sa kanilang movement. So nothing happens there.
Are not being banned yet from entering China? Not yet?
Not yet, sir. I don't know.
When
In the meantime,
yeah,
Mr. Chairman,
sige.
yes, in the meantime, with that, how do we now monitor? How do we now ensure that such
Aside, sir.
passages are monitored, or at least how do you call it, prevented, or at least at the minimum monitored, that we are aware that what is the policy of the armed forces and the department?
We monitor them through visuals because once they shut off their automatic identification system, hindi na makita ng radar yon. But since the Cebu to Strait is so narrow, you can see them passing by and you can actually record the number of the bow and they can identify which is PLA Navy or Coast Guard. So by visual na lang sir ang monitoring natin.
And then, when the information, assuming hypothetically, we have that information that there is continuous entry into our territory, what is the
The protocol.
protocol? Yes.
Mr. Chair, that those information are submitted to the first at the Task Force West Philippine Sea, which is under Malacanang, and that task force under General Esperon in SA will submit it to the DFA for diplomatic protest.
So the protocol would be eventually a protest should be filed.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
for violations of
for not informing us that they are passing because they're passing through our territorial waters.
yes.
Territorial waters natin to eh.
And we just have to not tire of filing our protests.
Yes, yes, sir.
Yes,
We have filed maybe hundreds of protests
and
already.
we should keep filing, and we thank the Secretary for being vigilant in that regard.
I think the DFA is a very uh, religious in their filing of the protest and very quick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Relax ka muna, I'll ask the armed forces.
Yes, sir.
During the budget deliberation of the for the activation and operationalization of the AFP Cyber Group, no, the defense establishment explained that the 23.2 million pesos as requested was not adopted by DBM. No? In fact, it was removed since there's already 1.5 billion peso appropriation for the activation of AFP Cyber Group. Now my question is, what is the status of that group, AFP Cyber Group? Dapat fully operationalized na yan, or at least nearing completion of activation and operationalization. This is a new unit, di ba? And what does it do? What has it accomplished?
So the AFP Cyber Group was actually activated already last June of last year. And right now, the current activity, it has not yet been fully manned, but the current activities are more on organizational and
When you say activation, may lumabas lang na order activating it.
yes, sir.
But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's operating.
It's not yet fully operational, sir.
How operational it is? Anong status ng operationalization?
More of the activities right now, sir, are conducting trainings for the personnel that will be manning the AFP Cyber Group, and as well as developing its current capabilities.
Have you obligated the 1.5 billion? Not yet. Ano obligation rate nyo rito? I'm asking that because you're requesting for additional funding. Nagre-request kayo ng, I think, 14 million
Yes, sir.
operational requirements. So, kung hindi pa ito fully activated,
Yes, sir.
why is there a need for you to request for 14 million pesos pang operational expenses?
Yung for next year. So yung 1.5 is yung new activation. 1.5 is horizon to ng organization. So the 1.5 billion that has been allocated has not yet been obligated, and it's part of the modernization program sa Horizon 2 ng ano sir. The 14 million is actually for the MOE for next year of the AP Cyber Group, sir.
So, kung hindi pa ito, well, activated officially,
Yes,
but
sir.
not yet operating.
Yes, sir.
So, why is there a need for MOE, a 14 million peso appropriations for MOE, kung hindi naman ito activated or kung hindi naman ito operationalized?
It's not yet fully operational, sir, but it's already
How much of the 1.5 have you obligated?
wala pa, sir, because the 1.5, sir, is actually
Under
for
the
the
modernization,
capability build-up
yes.
na ng ano, sir.
Doon nakasama yung sa AFP Modernization
Yes, sir.
Fund. So, hindi pa nagagalaw yan.
Wala pa, sir. It has not yet
So,
been
saan
obligated,
gagamitin
sir.
yung 14 million na operational fund?
Yung 14 million kasi, sir, is for the MOE of the AFP Cyber Group that will be used for next year, sir. Yung 14 million is the 1.5 is for the capability build-up nung ano, sir. It's not the MOE
Why?
component ng ano,
Do
sir.
you envision to fully operationalize it within the year? That's why you need 14 million for MOE.
Yung full operational? Sir, I think
Training fund?
yes, sir. I think the program is to have it fully operational within 5 years yet, sir.
5-year period bang full operationalization?
Yes, sir,
ito?
to include, of course, the capability already with the equipment that we have to procure, sir.
Also, you're requesting 25 million pesos for the purchase of unmanned aerial system facilities. Nakapag-invest na ba kayo dito? Yung unmanned systems like remotely piloted aircraft, unmanned aerial vehicles. Meron ba kayong investment dyan? Yeah, nagre-request sila ng 25 million. Mukhang pang drones ito, purchase ng drones.
Can I interject, Mr. Chair? Sir, we have already bought several UAVs from the big ones, hindi yung maliliit. Yung may mga loiter time na mga 24 hours from from the Israelis. And they have started delivering it to us already. Dumating na yung dalawa malalaki, yung Hermes 450. And we will expect more deliveries this year and early next year. In fact, we bought 530 small drones for our tactical units, battalion and brigades. So we have sufficient already investment in this, Mr. Chair.
Advance yung capability nitong the bigger drones, the bigger ones.
Yes, sir.
And these are mostly deployed in Mindanao, I suppose.
Yes, sir. They are now. They will be deployed in Mindanao, in Hulu, in Palawan.
And even in insurgency-infested
Yeah,
areas.
especially in insurgency-infested areas.
How helpful?
Hindi pa sir kasi ano pa, they're still our people are still learning how to run it,
Okay.
how to operate it because the first delivery came in August.
How many do we have? Sufficient?
Eventually, sir, we will have sufficient because the Air Force will have theirs and the Navy also and
And
the
that's
Army.
why you're confident to end the insurgency problem within when?
That's one factor, the end of the President's term, Mr. Chair.
So we can move on yung SRDP. Ikaw, very particular ka rito eh. Tsaka you've been very vocal. How are we performing in terms of achieving the goals set by the SRDP program?
Very little, Mr. Chair, because of lack of funding. What we have been doing lately was to invite locators to locate in Limay at our government arsenal in Limay, Bataan, so that they can produce the materials or equipment here. And I think the first ones that came were the company that makes bulletproof vests and helmets. The GA Arsenal is also talking to a company in Korea to manufacture the magazines and small arms. But in terms of us investing in equipment, sir, especially the upgrading of our ammunition factory in Bataan, it's nothing, sir. It's still very old and it's very inefficient.
The chair acknowledges the presence of Senator Amy Marcos. Good morning, ma'am. Yeah, how much are we investing sa research, R&D? You're asking for only 40 million for next year. Is that
Oh.
sufficient?
No, sir. I don't know who is using that for the EP lang yan. Ano yan, sir? We are not spending enough for our R&D.
Tsaka nakalatya tayo sa National Security Council.
Yes, sir.
Yung R&D fund of 40 million pesos. So, ang AFP, wala. Ang DND.
None, sir. None, sir. R&D?
I think you should invest more on R&D.
Wala, sir. In fact, yung nakalagay dyan is the Army requested 400 million, pero yung IEP pala, binigyan ng 40. That's actually additional MOE for the people, not R&D actually.
Yes, Senator Tolentino.
I think the good secretary can look at the possibility of linking up with the Department of Science and Technology likewise, pending allocation of a hefty budget for your R&D. Kasi the DOST could serve as a think tank and an R&D for the DND. In fact, Mr. Chair, I was able to visit one of their exhibits and I was amazed. Lo and behold, they developed a bulletproof vest made of bamboo. The OST. So I think you should touch base with your cabinet colleague Secretary De La Peña. My suggestion, sir.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have already tie up with them. We have people already talking to them kung ano yung mga equipment that we want developed by the OST because they have money for R&D and we do not have.
I'm sorry, I misread my notes. Ano? Actually, yung average allocation ng defense sa R&D is nasa mga 160 million. For 2020, yung 40 million yung nasa National Security Council. NDCP received 545 million in 2018. Pero wala naman pondong dumating na in 2019 and walang proposal for 2020.
Wala, sir, wala.
So,
I think the main reason is that we don't have any, like before, that we have the Log Command who has capability for research and development. Ngayon, wala na tayong agency to do that, the AFP.
ano mangyayari sa armed forces or defense kung wala tayong R&D program? Parang procure na lang, bilhin na lang tayo ng
We'll
bilhin
just
kung wala.
copy what the others are making.
Yeah.
They'll just reverse engineering so that we can get the equipment.
Only China is capable of doing that. Nandiyan na rin tayo sa reverse engineering.
We can
Have
do
we
that, sir.
produced one item using reverse engineering?
Yes, sir. I think we can. It's easy actually to do that. That we have already the technology and the equipment to do that. Especially firearms, it's very easy to reverse engineer that. Even the precision guided munition, they can.
Mapagmultahin yung national government sa violation ng copyright saka patent. Will be fined heavily by whoever we copy it from.
owns the IP.
Amy,
Before I transfer to the Marawi hearing again, Mr. President, Mr. Chair, sa kabila, I intimated during the Marawi hearing a while ago that there was one Maute holdout that was captured yesterday in Batangas City, pretending to be a cell phone vendor. But my question would be directed towards the Navy. It has been our dream, and I think it's also the dream of the good secretary, to have our own submarine. There has been a proposal to acquire a diesel submarine from France, from other countries, without divulging confidential matters. Is this part of the Russian trip to secure even a second hand from the dockyard in Vladivostok? And what is now our submarine dream program to speak of, Mr. Secretary?
Mr. Chairman, I have not heard that a submarine will be one of the topics to be discussed in Moscow. I don't know, maybe I was just hindi sinabi sa amin, but it's not in the talking points. But really, yes, we are in a plan. We plan to acquire at least a couple of submarines in the near future, and maybe the flag officer in command of the Navy can explain some more on this, the
Sir,
rationale of the submarine.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Your Honor, sir. Sir, we plan to acquire 2 submarines in 2027. We have engaged some companies like those in France, Korea, and even Russia. But I think the ideal proposal is coming from France, which fits our technical proposal for acquisition of 2 submarines. And if that proposal will be fulfilled, sir, the plan is to have those 2 submarines to be acquired in the year 2027, Mr. Chair, Your Honor.
submarines.
It is a brand new, they are brand new submarines, Your Honor, Mr. Chair.
So be sure not to reverse engineer that because sayang naman kung brand new. Thank you.
Status ng yung threat status ng communist rebels. What's the present status? How many barangays are still influenced? How many have we cleared? And then what's the status of the localized peace talks if we are pursuing that direction?
Sir, we still have 798 affected barangays. Most of these areas actually have ongoing community support programs that are in place. And by the end of the year, the goals there is to clear almost half of these 798 barangays.
There was a claim made by Al-Haj Murad, no? Yung Bangsamoro Interim Chief Minister and Chairman of MILF. Sabi niya, main source ng loose firearms sa Mindanao, AFP itself. So, ano ba yung pang-counter natin dito? Which may be true, ha?
It may be true, Mr. Chair, because a lot of the encounters that were held before, medyo naisahan tayo, nakukuha nila yung baril ng mga sundalo. But if he is claiming that there are a black market for firearms coming from our inventory, I think wala naman tayo ni-report na mga ganun. There are no reported losses that are big. So, ito siguro, kasi ang sabi niya, wala na raw pumapasok from outside. I don't think so because we have a very porous borders in the south and they can always sneak in cache of firearms.
And I think I asked this question already last year. Pero may capability sila to produce or manufacture firearms? Wala. Myth lang.
Meron, repair lang, sir. Repair lang.
Repair.
Repair. They can also manufacture yung M79, pero yung very crude na ilang putok lang, sira na yung parang rifling.
So it's not true that they have an
They have
arsenal?
no, sir. They have no arsenal. They have no shops to manufacture firearms.
Okay.
Just one question, Mr. Chair, before I leave. We've been maintaining an AFP radio for the past several decades. I've been interviewed by AFP radio several times. Is there a possibility of relocating our AFP radio to some other places where they might be needed? Because you're competing in Metro Manila with 50,000 watt RMN, DCMM, DCRH, etc., etc. So probably the AFP radio will not be heard in Metro Manila. And the reach probably is not as strong as Radio 5 and other radio stations because the air here is more congested, so to speak. So is there a possibility, policy direction-wise, to relocate somewhere else in Negros, in other areas where it might be needed for PSYOPs purposes, so to speak, Mr. Secretary?
I will have to look into this, Mr. Chair. I have not gone to that station for maybe 2 years already. I was there 2 years ago. In fact, I was interviewed there. I will look into it, sir, and make our recommendation properly. So.
I'd like to.
Mr. Chair, Your Honor. Sir, the radio station is actually intended for audience here in Metro Manila. What we do actually in our in the units on the ground is to partner with other radio stations and they give us airtime so that we can actually use that airtime to present our programs and probably invite some of the guests also that can help in as far as the addressing the current security issues are concerned. So hindi siya independent na radio station exclusively for the armed forces, but there are local radio stations that give us airtime so that we can use this as a venue for our information operations, sir.
But we have a transmitter located within Aguinaldo. So if the more efficient mode is to have radio guestings with other stations, siguro that transmitter can be relocated elsewhere. That's my policy suggestion, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir, we will look into that, sir, if, on how we can actually improve the coverage for this radio station, sir.
Thank you. Ito, singilan lang ng konti ah. Aside from the 1.39 billion na inaugmento sa Infantry Division, I also augmented the following. And I would like to find out kung ano yung status. 48 million for Task Force Balikloob, ECLIP and ECLIP under the Office of the Secretary. 53 million for the Veterans Hospitalization and Medical Care Program. 155 million for BMMC's requirements for drugs and medicines. You requested more, but when we inquired from the Department of Health, ang taas lang daw ng presyo nasa 10%. That's the reason why the request that you forwarded to us was not carried in totality. So tama ba yun? 10% lang? Kasi you claim that 50%. Yes, please.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Your Honors. First, we'd like to thank you for giving us the 155 million, although initially you gave us 666. Now, the reason for the increase was because of the marked increase in the DPRI. This is the Drug Price Reference Index. And we can show you a slide as to how labile the price of every year is. Can we show this? Because this becomes now an issue to all the other hospitals, sir. This is also the cause of...
So Secretary Duque was not telling the truth when I asked him, ano ba yung increase ng
No, we
price
will
ng-
show you, sir. In fact,
Yeah, meron ka?
yes po.
So, yeah. Pagdating ng budget ng DOH, you give us
Yes, sir.
you give us a copy.
In fact, we brought it with us.
Okay.
Just very briefly po. The 55 million, sir, for the COS was already fully utilized. The 100 million is still earmarked for utilization, but we are sure we can obligate the amount in the last part of the year. Just the last slide, please. Can you enlarge it? Yan, ito po. Now, these are the prices, sir, based on the drug price reference index on some of the commonly used medicines.
Pang
Tingnan niyo
100
po-
to ah. Amlodipine.
Yes, amlodipine. Yan po yung pang alta presyon po. Yan po yung mga Norvasc, Amvasc. Now, if you notice, the price is 2.25, and then in 2017, it went up to about 11 pesos, and then it went down again to 72. Kaya may truth po siguro doon sa sinabi ni Secretary Duque. But take a look at the price sir, of CV5. This is a fourth generation antibiotic. From 130 in 2016, it went up to 1,400. It's 86.
1486.
1486.
2017.
Yes. Nobody can explain for the marked difference. And it went down again to 83 pesos. Kanya po, wala na akong sumasaling mga suppliers because of the very low ABC. Now, and then you have your clindamycin from 126 in 2017 again, it went up to 710. And then went down to 80 pesos. More so with fluconazole. From 148, tumaas po ng 4,513, and it went down to 393. Ilan? 363. So, based on the price increase, we actually based our request sir, for added funds
What
increase.
could be the reason for the sudden drop? Kasi, yun nga, sabi mo, wala na tuloy mag-participate sa bidding.
Opo.
So, nanalo na lang yung Doctors Pharmaceuticals. Ganun ba yan?
Sir, actually, hindi ko namin maintindihan kung ano ang rason ng DPRI.
Kasi kung masyadong mababa, walang magbibid, there's failure of bidding.
Correct. And what happens po is that our bidding success has gone down to about 27%. But when a patient comes, we're forced to to give them medicines. How do we do that? We buy the medicines through an emergency purchase. We lose the discount by volume. At the same time, our amount is limited.
Teka, liwanagin natin because I have my own personal experience dito. No? When I was second lieutenant, nasa Biluna ako. Laging emergency purchase, ibig sabihin ako bumibili. Ubos yung sweldo ko, kaya emergency purchase kasi hindi available eh. Yung ba ibig sabihin ng emergency purchase?
No, sir.
The patient is the
Sa
one
amin
na...
po, we buy all the medicines. We give...
So, hospital yung bumibili?
Yes, hospital po.
So, noong palang 1971, when I was confined, niloloko ako ng Biluna. Kasi emergency purchase, kami, nanay ko bumibili, actually.
Sir, actually...
Esweldo namin ni Del noon, 320 pesos. Base pay, di ba? So, sabit lang ito, 100 million for operational requirements of anti-insurgency under LPGHQ. 850 million for the increase in the allowance. CAPGO, na-activate na ito. Yung hiningin yung 850 million for the allowance ng CAPGO. Of course, allowance lang naman talaga yung CAPGO eh. Fully activated na ito. How many CAPGO companies were activated? Yung sa CAPGO. Sige, para ano, matapos tayo.
Sir, there are a total of 623 CAPGO companies with 69,938 personnel.
For the benefit of Senator Amy, pakiulit mo yung figures.
Ma'am, sorry ma'am. We have 623 CAPGO companies, ma'am, with 69,938 personnel.
OCD. One of your targets sa 2020 under the Civil Defense Enhancement Sub-Program is to reach 65% assessed local disaster risk reduction and management offices. No? In addition, your target number of LDRRM plans to be reviewed and evaluated in 2020 is 1,715. Ito yung isang observation namin noon during my time as PAR. No? Walang DRR plans at saka walang local DRRMOs no? in the provinces, municipalities, even in the barangays. So what's the status now?
Sir, there were reports from DILG, and actually it's DILG that's closely monitoring the creation of DRRM offices.
Ang OCD, di ba meron kayo sa hanggang level?
At the
provincial?
level of the region, sir.
Region lang kayo?
Yes, sir. But DILG has personnel down
Sila
to the
nagmaman
municipal
doon sa
level.
lower LGUs, provincial and
Municipal level,
municipal.
sir.
But they would submit to the regional offices.
Uh,
And the regional offices should be submitting to you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But the mandate of reviewing the local DRRM plan is with OCD based on the law RA 10121.
So wala kang data nito? Paki-check mo lang.
We will have in the officer, but we
Sige.
will furnish the officer.
Unused appropriations. The total actual unused appropriations of the department for 2018, kasi yun ang may data tayo, 2019 hindi pa tapos, 15.9 billion pesos. 41% increase in the unused appropriations of the department from the 2017 level of 11.2. Bakit ang laki ng unused? 2018 ito, tapos na yung taon.
Mr. Chair, according to our, because the budget authorization of 2018 was extended to first quarter of 2019, our utilization rate is actually 93.8% already. So Program 1, Philippine Army, 97.3% rate of utilization. Program 2, PEF, 99.9. Philippine Navy, Program 3, 99.7. GHQ, 86.5. And Program 5, 98.7. So, okay na kami, Mr. Chair, kung ikulat. Siguro hindi lang na-input siguro yung yung spillover na ginamit namin noong
But you still
2019.
have to improve on your obligation rate at saka yung disbursement rate. Ano?
We will, sir.
Yeah.
We will, sir.
Yung COA, will just inform you. May mga COA observations.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
So, ano pa? I mean,
Yes, very quickly, Mr. Secretary, I'm merely here to request firstly through the chairman for a projected retirement pension plan expense for the next 5 to 10 years because we're quite alarmed at the ballooning figures. So the legislation that has been filed come in different forms. So we would like to assess based on your projected numbers which plan would be best.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Yes, ma'am.
Sige po. So, 5 to 10 year period po, your projected numbers. And more importantly, I'm also here to inquire from the Secretary what we can do about the glacial pace of the Marawi effort to rebuild. It appears that 10 billion will once more be released, very much business as usual. As the chairman and I experienced in Tacloban, business as usual is simply not enough to rebuild a city. So, ano po ang gagawin natin para mapadali ng kaunti dahil napakabagal naman talaga ng pag-usad ng pagtatatag muli ng syudad ng Marawi.
Mr. Chair, I used to be the chairman of Task Force Bangon Marawi, but it was removed from me and it was given to the HUDCC and Secretary Eddie Rosario. We have already engineering people there trying to help them, and we do not know the reason, Mr. Chair, why there is a glacial movement of the rehabilitation, because I also get texts from Marawi residents that they're already desperate to what's happening there, and we would like also to address their concerns about their areas there.
There is no plan. I see here another 10 billion similar to last year and the year before. Then there's also a report from the DTI that livelihood interventions have indeed been provided for many of the evacuees. Pero hanggang ngayon, evacuee pa rin sila, backwit pa rin sila. Ano pang magagawa natin? May plano po ba yung DND para mapabilis ng kaunti ito?
Mr. Chair, wala kasi, hindi kasi kami kasali dyan sa, sa Marawi Rehabilitation. But I'll talk to Secretary Edo Rosario kung ano magagawa namin para makatulong kami, sir.
The concern is that it's still OCD and the RRMC, kaya kahit papano it will still fall under your watch po.
OCD,
Yeah.
Yusik Halad.
Your Honor, there is a comprehensive Marawi recovery and rehabilitation plan. And the implementation of this is interagency. So there are difficulties unique to each implementing agency. Like, for example, the construction of school buildings that needs location, and but the different agencies are addressing those concerns. It's not concerns mainly that OCD can solve. It's more of the different implementing agencies, specifically on the formulation of specific project proposals. We merely process the project proposals that go to our office.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, is the sense of this representative that in fact the Baon Marawi effort does not seem to be considered by the DND, part of their ambit of responsibility. And similarly, it is also not included in the other departments. As a result, it seems to be falling through the cracks. And given its strategic and critical purpose, it's important that through the legislation that is the budget, we finally address its rebuilding.
I agree, Mr. Chair, because we also want to have the rehabilitation started already. Para may nakikita yung mga tao doon na may nangyayari.
Yun nga, habang nakatiwangwang ang buong syudad, talagang nawawalang gana at nadidismaya sa gobyerno ang ating mga kapatid ah, sa South, no? At hirap na hirap sila sa kalagayan nila ngayon. So, sa palagay ninyo, Sekretary, anong dapat gawin?
Ang dapat gawin doon is you start clearing the area already dahil at the same time locating the unexploded ordnance. Meron kasing binagsak yung Philippine Air Force na hindi pumutok. About 500 pounder to 50 pounder na hinahanap pa hanggang ngayon so that is the reason, Mr. Chair, why the rehabilitation is not moving, because they don't want to have some accidents there. Now, there was a suggestion before to build another city just adjacent to that. Ano natin yun, doon natin mag-build para we can already start making the horizontal development and start building the houses. Kasi kung hintayin natin itong main battle area na ma-clear, I think it will take time before the engineers or any expert can locate the bombs. Yun siguro
Ilang bombs yung unaccounted, yung hindi sumabog tapos hindi ma-account?
Unexploded.
Unexploded.
Mga
Yung big bombs.
500 pounder and about 40 na 250.
Unexploded yet unaccounted.
Unaccounted. Unexploded na unaccounted.
Hindi nga pwede mag-rehabilitate niya.
So, Mr. Palafox, at the start, he already said we make another city, not this one, because it will take a monumental just to clear matagal. And he was right. I think if we followed his advice before, meron tayong city ngayon.
Yes, that's right. Unfortunately, AFP pays the price for the neglect of Marawi constantly, daily, in every part of the country. So I think it's in our interest to finally put our heads together and determine what to do, whether it will be a new city alongside the old or build on the ashes of the old, insisting that perhaps these unexploded bombs are already safe, and so on and so forth. It's important that we finally come to a solution po. Dahil 2 taon na nakalipas, wala pa tayong maipakita. That's right. Ganun din yung Yolanda umabot na ng 6 years by November. So, wag naman tayo mapunta roon.
Yes, Mr.
Acting Superintendent PMA, hazing. Of course, we all went through this, but times have changed. Kasi meron na tayong anti-hazing law. While we sympathize with the family of the late Dormitorio, we cannot help but also pity those who are now facing murder charges, violation of anti-hazing law. Because there's really that big possibility that they will be spending the rest of their lives in jail, kasi reclusion perpetua. But how do we remedy this? Probably, kulang din ang information campaign sa mga kadete because not everybody reads Republic Act 11053, amending 8949. Kasi tayo noon, dismissal lang. Of course, ninenervous na tayo facing dismissal. But now, it's different because meron pang jail term na kasama on top of dismissal. There's this proposal from a fellow Cavalier that we should probably include the hazing in the honor system. Of course, the gray book is internal to the cadets, to the CIFP. But of course, being alumni, we can also suggest to them, kasi violation of law nobody goes to jail for lying, pero it's in the honor code. Of course, many have already gone to jail for stealing, pero itong anti-hazing, because of the passage of 11053, medyo mabigat talaga yung parusa. And there are guidelines, di ba, when we discussed the bill, when it was being deliberated on the floor. Ang ang exception lang diyan, of course, kasama yung MUPs including military yung sa training. But of course, it is may qualification subject to the guidelines issued by the DND in the case of the armed forces and the NAPOLCOM in the case of the PNP. Even athletes, no, meron ding qualification because they can also be charged for the violation of the anti-hazing law. Now, of the cuff lang, do you have anything in mind to prevent further occurrence or occurrences of hazing?
Yes, sir. Good morning, sir. Brigadier General, sir, the PMA Assistant Superintendent.
You're not the acting, you're assistant.
The Assistant Superintendent, sir. Currently, sir, the anti-hazing law was discussed among the cadets, and the other interventions, sir, the cadet organization was reviewed to include the Gray Book, sir, and the First Class Policy Board. So these are all ongoing reviews to include, sir, the honor system. There was a reindoctrination among the cadets and also the tactical officers. And on program also, sir, is the character enhancement program for the cadets, and that might also include the headquarters tactic groups personnel, sir. And now, sir, the hazing now is part of the honor system. It is we can directly question.
Is
the
it now
cadets
part of the honor system?
Yes,
That you
sir.
can be challenged all right,
for
and if you haze somebody, you cannot respond to the challenge.
Yes, sir.
And therefore, it's a tacit admission that you hate somebody.
Yes, sir.
That's
It's
good.
now part of the all rights, sir, for maltreatment. It started just after the review of the honor system during the case review for cadet dormitories, sir.
So, kasama na sa honor system, a cadet does not
Found-
lie, does not cheat, does not haze.
No,
Ganun
no,
ba
sir.
yun?
It's not
Kasi honor
included in the
system eh.
honor system, sir. But they can be challenged if the fourth class men. Yes, sir. Part of the
So,
honor
if
system.
you do not respond to the challenge, hindi ka nag-all right, so pwede ka
For investigation.
pwede ka report na
Yes, sir.
sa battalion board. Saan ka report?
To the battalion board, sir, for investigation and
The
most possibly to the honor
honor
committee,
committee.
sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Sige. On that note, maybe we can already suspend the hearing. Sige. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.